Hello everybody, so today we're doing a 3UZ-FE VVT-i. This is from a Crown Majesta, so it's the 6-speed model, the later 04 to 08 models. This is going into an IS200 left-hand drive vehicle, and it's using a J160 Manual Gearbox. So let's do this. Right, so as discussed, this is a Toyota Crown Majesta 3UZ-FE VVT-i. It is the later model, so it's the version that had a 6-speed automatic gearbox on it. This one is obviously going into an IS200. It's going to be a left-hand drive vehicle, and they're using a manual gearbox. So what we're going to do today, first of all, I've got a couple of photos of the preparation process, what we go through, how we strip everything down, remove everything that's not needed, and add in the bits that are. So we're going to cut through now, have a couple of look at those photos, and then we'll be back in a second, and we'll carry on with the testing. Right, so now you've seen what it looks like. Obviously, this is an existing harness that we strip down completely, recover everything, remove everything it's not required anymore, and then obviously put it all back together and add in all the wires that are going to be used in this particular setup. So it's broken into two big sections. First of all, I'm going to go through the entire layout of the harness so the customer knows exactly where everything plugs in. It's relatively straightforward, but I go around the whole harness so you can see everything. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do a testing, which is broken into two smaller sections. One that's going to be just with the ignition on. So there's a couple of things we test with the OBD2 machine and a couple of things we test on the engine over there. Then what we're going to do is we're actually going to start the engine up, and we're going to do a couple of tests there as well, so you can see that everything is running 110% and ready to rock and roll when you put it in your car. Right, so for the layout purposes, obviously we start here at the ECU box. Now obviously there were some photos in there showing how it looks like in the ECU box, so you can see what it looks like when it's complete. Obviously, because the engine's on a big stand like that, we can't obviously have everything flat down there. First of all, obviously, in terms of your ECU box, this is obviously from the newer generation of that, so you can clearly see by this it's only got the one screw instead of the two screws over there. This is reminiscent of a GS430 05 to 08, and also the Crown Majesta. Now then, like with any 3UZ, if you've got an IS200 ECU box, which is exactly the same as here, there's a couple of ways of making it fit. Number one is obviously trying to get your hands on an IS300 box, in which case this will go straight down and this lip won't be in the way. Second option is you can obviously just remove that screw, pull out the board, then you can grind off this lip and then it'll go straight down. In this particular case, obviously, because you've got these winglets on here, because they had a very different box on the GS third generation and obviously the Crown Majesta, you can obviously saw these off or cut these off with an angle grinder. Again, this whole section here where the plugs are comes straight out, and you're left with the empty shell, so you can do all the work without risking damaging the actual ECU itself. Okay, so that's very important. If you're going to take out any of this work, make sure you remove that. It is literally just that screw over there, that screw over there, then that whole thing slides out. All right. Okay, now that that's out of the way, we've got the plugs that are going into the ECU. So we've got our three sort of engine plugs over there. They just go straight around there, out there. Then you've got the two body plugs, obviously have all the body functions in there. They go off to a nice little patch harness that we build over here, which integrates into your existing IS200 plugs. The rest of the body stuff, you've got your gray, your black, your blue plug over there. Again, all different, can't be plugged into the wrong place. Then you've got a little junction down here, so that can obviously be tucked down the bottom over there, no problem at all. We then have our normal relay for the brake switch, because obviously it works on a 4 system, and not all of the IS200s have that 4 system. So if your vehicle's originally a manual, you only have a single brake switch. If it was originally auto, you do have that. For simplification purposes, we use the relay to do it, so we don't have to make loads of different styles of harness just in case you have an auto or a manual IS200. All right, now then, because this is a 6-speed version, these communicate via CAN, not the MPX beam system of the IS200. So we need our little box here, and that converts all of those CAN signals to MPX, and they can be viewed via the vehicle. And obviously all the stuff inside the instrument panels will work as per usual. Last but not least, again, because it's CAN, we're obviously unable to integrate with the OBD2 in the vehicle itself because it didn't have any provision for CAN. Pins 6 and 14 are obviously not used for CAN. So we have actually fitted an OBD2 plug inside the ECU box here. Again, they can be tucked under the bottom when not used, and obviously brought out when you want to do diagnostics on the vehicle. Okay, right, so that's all the entire ECU box. As per standard, you've got your normal grommet in there. So again, the GSs and the Crown have a very different grommet, completely different ECU box, more like an IS250. So we replaced it with the correct one, and that's obviously just going to slide in that little grommet over there. I do apologize, it's left over from a non-VVT-i harness that was in here. But anyway, there's a little slide in there, so that slides straight into there. Comes out of there, goes along here, has a little rubber sort of section over here. Then we're going to get into our first piece of plastic that's holding all the harness together, and that bolts down in two places, which is right there and right there. Okay, now out of this box, a couple of sections coming out. First of all, you've got this little section over here, and that goes to injector 1 and coil 1. So do remember, the way you look at the engine is from the back. And obviously then this is the left-hand side, that is the right-hand side, and you've got cylinder 1, 3, 5, and 7, 2, 4, 6, and 8. So obviously when I go through, I'm just going to tell you which injector they are, but that's just so you know the overall layouts, okay? So again, here, injector 1 and coil 1. Then it comes forward and it breaks out over here. Now here, obviously we don't have the TPS, because remember this is a 6-speed, so it has the single 6-pin plug on the throttle there, not the 4-pin TPS here, and the 2-pin throttle motor plug there, okay? So all that comes out of here is the oil control valve, and that plugs straight in over there. Then the harness comes down, breaks up just over here. You can see there is a section to obviously clamp it down there so it stays nice and tight. But it pops out over here and goes to your front cam sensor. So remember, the 1UZ VVT-i and 3UZ VVT-i, they actually have 3 cam sensors. They've got one in the front here, and they've got one on each inlet to monitor the cam rotation because of the VVT-i. Right, that comes down along here, and you'll see you've got mounting holes there and there. So obviously that keeps the harness nice and tight over there. Then coming down here, we're going to break out into 2 sections here now. First of all, we've got our air conditioning. All right, so that is, again, that just plugs in there. Now, bearing in mind, with these later model 6-speed ones, the actual aircon pump does not have a traditional, what we call a magnetic style clutch, okay? They actually just run all the time, and they use a PWM solenoid at the back to vary how much, you know, I suppose aircon they're going to do effectively. All right, so just remember, if you guys want to run aircon in these units, you can't use the new style aircon pumps. Unfortunately, you do have to get yourself either you can use ones from the 2nd generation GS430, because they just had that. The 1st generation SC430s, also the same, or even the LS400 1UZ VVT-i, and even a non-VVT-i, they have this exact same plug on, so there are no problems there whatsoever. You can use those. And then obviously, in this case, because the aircon's not controlled by the engine ECU, it's actually our little box there that controls the aircon. We actually feed the pressure signals in there, so it's obviously got the safety built in, and that then controls it. It also ups the idle when you press the aircon as well. Quite a nice, useful feature that we've got there. All right. Now then, the other breakout that we've got over there is going to be the oil. So you see there's actually 3 sections down there. Now in this case, because we've got an LS430 motor and the oil filter is facing forward, I've obviously taken the oil plug down through there. Down through there, again, your aircon pump would be here. Coming out the bottom here, and then it goes to the crank sensor. So that plugs in right there. It sort of tucks away nice and neatly, so you don't have anything touching on the crank wheel there, but do make sure that is the case, that it is tucked down the back side of there, just so that it doesn't fall out and hit the crank pulley over there. Now in this case, we've got the oil switch over here. Now obviously, again, the Crown would have had a mid-sump basically identical to this on the LS430, so the customer's obviously going to swap to a front sump to fit into an IS200, which means he's going to have to get the oil filter housing that's associated with the front sump. So you're going to take the wire out there, and then it's going to plug into the oil switch, which lives just over there at the back there. Okay, so obviously plenty long enough in there, and they split right at the top here, so you've got plenty of length in order to reach that particular place that you need to. Right, okay, so that's that whole section down there. So let's move over to here. Now obviously plastic stops over there. It then runs along here, and obviously we've taped it up there with the engine harness tape just to keep everything nice and secure and a bit better looking than the sprag or whatever you call it that goes on there. Anyway, and then you're going to get to your other piece of plastic that's holding everything together, and that bolts down there and there. So nice and simple. All the 3UZ and 1UZ VVT-Is have that hole, so you should have it no matter what engine you've got. Right, the first section that breaks out over here is going to go to injector 3 and coil 3, and lastly your cam sensor for the inlet cam on the left bank, which just plugs in over there. Right, the next section is going to pop out. You've got your noise filter, so you should have one of these things on this side and one of these things on this side, and that just plugs directly into there. That's all part of the standard harness over there. Now obviously the Vacuum solenoid valve that also lives here, we have removed that from the system entirely and it's been remapped out the ECU. So that can obviously go. You can just throw that away and you'll see there's no plug for that on the harness there. But also coming out of there is obviously going to be injector 5 and coil 5. Moving further along, we've got the last little breakout here of this section with a little thing on there, and that's going to go to injector 7 and coil 7 over there. Okay, so it's dictated where they pop out as to where they plug in, so you can see that nice and straightforward over there. Right, come into the back, you're obviously going to get the end of the plastic there. The harness is just going to break out for a small section and go back into another piece of plastic that obviously is routing the harness around the back of the engine here. Now, this piece of plastic, that bolts in over there and over there. So those are your 2 bolts there. So remember, the 3UZ harnesses have a different black plastic from the 1UZ VVT-i because the 1UZ VVT-i has a different water bridge, so it has different mounting locations. Okay, so if you're putting a 3UZ harness onto a 1UZ VVT-i or you're putting a 1UZ VVT-i onto a 3UZ, just bear that in mind. You're going to have that situation where you cannot mount this. I think the only mounting point that's the same is that one over there. All the mounting points here and over here for the VVT-i is obviously no longer there. You could get a water bridge from a VVT-i if you really wanted to get that all mounted down properly, but that's what you would have to do in order to do that. Okay, right, so coming down the plastic along here, we have our breakout down here. So I'm going to start there. So first of all, we've got our earth strap. So again, as a 3UZ, we're using the M6 holes over there for our earth strap for our harness. Your M8 hole will be open and nothing should be in there because obviously that wasn't used by the original engine harness on the 3UZ, but it is there if you want to use it for something else. And you've got another M8 hole over there. So M8, M8, M6. Okay, so those are those 3 holes over there. Right, next up we've got our wideband, or sorry, narrowband Lambda sensor that goes down in between there. Now do remember there's a metal shield that protects this plug from the exhaust. Guys, please do install that. Obviously this being super close to the exhaust and the ability over time to possibly touch the exhaust, you really don't want that to happen. Your plug is not going to last a long time, so please remember, keep that shield in place to protect all the plugs and everything that are going to be there. Right. Next up, as it's a left-hand drive, we've obviously got our pedal harness over here. So you can see all of the new items we've added in are all labeled. So that is pedal. And then we've got the section over there and it runs down to the pedal, which you can see we bolts to the body over there. Obviously it's on that side because I do some testing over there, but in the original car it would pop out, go through the firewall here and into the driver's footwell, where you will plug the pedal in, and that's the pedal we are supplying to the customer. We do keep those in stock. Right. The next one is a change that we've made recently, and that is for the gearbox. Now this one is running a J160, but we've noticed a lot of times you guys are changing gearbox over time. And so obviously what we've done is we've put the gearbox on a separate sub harness there. So you could run a J160, R154, BMW, but obviously you lose the speed signal, you just have the reverse light. So this means you guys can change your gearbox without any major issue. Phone us up, tell us what gearbox you've got. We might need some measurements and we'll make you a little sub harness to plug into your new gearbox. Again, nice and simple and straightforward. Obviously that runs down there to the reverse and the speed sensor switch. It's on that side because we'll do some testing over there. Okay, so that's everything that pops out over here. So we've got pedal, gearbox, earth strap, and a Lambda over there. Moving along, obviously you have the middle section here with your big plug now. Remember, this is a 6-speed. Now the 6-speeds do actually have wideband knock sensors on. Okay, so that means they do use 2 wires instead of 1. And obviously that's why this is a much bigger plug. You'll see we've got 4 wires there. So it's knock 1, negative and positive, knock 2, negative and positive. And then you have your starter solenoid with 1 blanking grommet in the middle there. Okay, right, just ignore this one. We didn't get this sub harness sent from the customer, so obviously this is my one just for testing. This is obviously not what it would look like on your vehicle. In the case of this customer, they already have this in the vehicle, so they're just going to plug this into the harness when they get it. Okay. Last thing with the starter motor is obviously your main power section. So that's obviously going to come out there. I say obviously a lot. That's going to come out there and it's going to go to the positive of your battery. It doesn't go to any sort of fusible link or anything like that. Obviously in the left-hand drive vehicle, the battery is going to be over there. So it's going to go straight over there and plug into the battery over there. So that's everything from underneath. So do remember, in this case, the customer, if he's not taking out that harness over there, he can just drop this harness on and put it on there. For the guys that do send us the sub harness to make sure it's all still working and remade if needs be, obviously then you'd have to pull all the intake, everything off to get that done. Right, so moving along, again, nice and simple. The plastic just keeps everything nice and neat. Popping out down here is our second earth, and again goes to the same. You've got an M6 hole there. You should have your bolt in there because a 3UZ engine, so that's where it was earthed originally. Again, same as the other side, you've got your M8 over there, but you don't have a second M8 like you do on the left bank cylinder head. So just one of those earths over there, or one of those extra holes over there. Moving along here, you're going to have your first breakout here, which is going to go to injector 8 and coil 8. So remember 2468. All right, it's going to come a little bit more forward and break out over there. Now that goes to your ACIS plug, or acoustic control induction system, or variable intake runner length. You say potato, I say potato. So that's going over there. Then we've got injector 6 and coil 6 coming out there. It then goes more forward and it breaks out over here. And then you've got your cam sensor for the right bank, you've got injector 4, and you've got coil 4, and then lastly we've got our noise filter over here. All right. Coming again a bit more forward, and remember there are mounting points here and here, so you're more than happy to get yourself some P-clamps and you can mount that over there if you so desire. But coming to the front here, we're going to have another breakout, and that's going to go to injector 2, it's going to go to coil 2. There's quite a lot breaking out here, so I'll go slowly. Then we've got oil control valve, that plugs straight in over there. We've then got the coolant temp sensor, that plugs straight in over there. And then lastly, we've got our drive-by-wire motor. And again, because it's 6-speed, everything is all in one 6-pin plug rather than being split into 2. All right. Now then the last bit that breaks out over here is going to be the mass airflow sensor. All right, so that plugs in over there. Just remember to always make sure that you get the correct mass airflow sensor for your particular vehicle. A nice easy way to make sure you get the correct one. You can use Toyo DIY. It's really super and simple. All you do is you take your ECU, you put your part number in. So to give you an example of this one, you can see the part number there is 89661-30D30. Put that in. What it'll do is it'll pull up the vehicle, all right? Once you go into there, you want to go into air cleaner section or air box section, and in that particular section, you will find the mass airflow. It'll give you the part number. There you go. Go online and you can get the correct one for your vehicle to make sure that it is correct, all right? This is obviously if you've got a complete vehicle, you should have the correct mass because it would have come with the vehicle. Then coming down here, obviously we're going to come down here, and then we break out down at the bottom over here. Now obviously this is a crown, so if you've been watching our other videos with 3UZs, you know that the crown actually controls the alternator completely by the ECU, all right? Obviously I've got an LS435 speed alternator, so I make a little adaptation to there, but this has got the 4-pin, what I call square plug. That's what I've named it. All right, and obviously this is the oval plug with only 3 wires in. So I've just made a little adaptation there, so obviously I can get the alternator to work and everything on the dash to work as it should. But do bearing in mind, you can't just swap alternators with an LS or a GS when it becomes to a crown, because obviously the ECU controls the actual alternator. All right, so just be very careful of that. And that does also apply the other way round. If you've got an American LS or a US or European LS or GS430, you know, the second generations of those that had the 6-speed auto, you can't just go and put a crown alternator in here because it won't work. All right, you can plug it in, but obviously there's an extra wire that's trying to control it, and the regulators are different in there. All right, Calvin did a good video on that, so if I can find it, I'll just put a link up there. So Calvin Glover from Cartoon NZ done a nice video with the alternators. Again, I'll put a link up there if I do find it. All right. Last section is going to be our Lambda sensor. So that is the rear one over here. And again, as per usual with the 3UZ, this is the long wire on this side and the other side is the short wire. Okay, so do remember that. They are wired differently. If you try to put the long wire one on the other side and you put the short wire one on this side, the short wire one's probably not going to reach because the plug's not long enough. And what you're going to end up with is an error code anyway for a heater circuit because they are wired differently. All right, so just bear that in mind. You need the correct Lambda sensors for each side. This is obviously unique to the 3UZ. The 1UZ VVT-i just had the same Lambda sensors on both banks, and you could obviously interchange them, no problem. Don't ask me why they did that. I don't work into research and development. All right, so that's all that section over there. And that pretty much covers the entire layout. So hopefully very, very nice and simple to obviously go up on. Just by follow the basic principle, it makes a U shape. So you drop it all on, or what I do is I drop it all on, I bolt down all the plastics, and then I start clicking everything away and plugging it all in. All right. The way the harness is routed kind of dictates where everything goes. So it should be relatively straightforward and simple. All right. Okay. So nice and simple. The only things that you're going to add as a customer if you get this harness onto this particular vehicle is going to be your main power cable for your alternator. So that's the one that actually bolts on there like that. You can see the nut and bolt over there. All right. Now then, I'm going to show you on this right-hand drive vehicle, but it's the same on the left-hand drive, just on the other side. But right here, in your fuse box that lives effectively near the battery, so again, left-hand side, it's the same, it's just the inverse of this one. Anyway, there is your little stud to put the alternator main power cable on. It's important you do that because it's got the 120 amp fuse that protects the alternator, all right? Don't take your alternators directly to the battery. If anything goes wrong, nothing's gonna pop and you're gonna end up obviously catching on fire. The wire will just melt if it shorts out. So always put the alternator on there. Do put your starter motor directly on there. That's the only one that goes directly to the battery. And then usually you have a nice little cable coming out the bottom of the fuse box there, and it goes in there. Now what they also do is you'll notice that they make the one that comes out of the fuse box slightly shorter than the one that comes out of the starter motor. So these can sit nicely on top of each other, and some of them actually have little sort of tangs that pop over there to actually keep everything together when you tighten it up. So again, really, really simple and straightforward. The last thing you want to do is your negative of your battery goes down under the battery, bolts to the chassis, pops down, and it's actually this wire over here. You can see it's coming out from under the battery there, and that we've bolted onto the block, but usually you'd bolt it right down there, usually on one of the mounts or whatever. Obviously this is too short to reach all the way down there. I did also put an extra earth on there on the block just to make sure that everything is hunky-dory there. Okay, right, so that's it. Entire layout, alternator main cable, starter motor main cable, earth to the block. That's all you need. The only other thing that I would recommend that you guys do, because Toyota does love earthing, is you can use the extra M8 hole over there. Get yourself one of those braided earth straps. From there to the firewall, all good, which is obviously standard on IS200 or 300. You would have seen that when you pulled the old motor out. And then down at the bottom, where the gearbox bolts on, there's another earth strap over there. If you put all those on, you should be good to rock and roll. You shouldn't have any issues with earthing. Actually, while I'm here, the only thing I will mention is these are aluminium. They do have a tendency to rust. So by all means, feel free, when you put this back on or before you screw these down, get yourself some memory cloth. Give this a good surface, a good clean, so you get a nice clean earth on the back of the cylinder head. Same applies for wherever you put in the earth on the block. Make sure it's nice and clean when you do put the earth on there. Okay, any of that sort of white aluminium rust that builds up over time, if that gets in between, obviously it's going to give you a poor connection to earth, and these engines can really mess you around if they have a bad earth connection. All right, so that is all of that. Obviously what I'm going to have to do now is obviously get ready for the actual running and testing. I've just got to move this down so I can put the PCV system back into place and get that all done and dusted. And I'm going to do that now. We're going to pop back and then we're going to look at the two testing sections we're going to do. So let me do that and I'll be back in a second. All right, so we're back again. Obviously everything is bolted down how I needed to get the engine started for the second part of the testing. Again, split into two sections. I'm going to go through exactly what we're going to be testing in each section, and then we'll get into it. So, in the beginning, the first test is going to be the ambient temperature. So, this is obviously once we turn the ignition on. I'm going to be coming over here, have a look and make sure the ambient temperature is being displayed on the dash, because it is being sensed by the ECU and being transmitted via our box by MPX to the car. Next up, we've got check engine light. So, I'm going to make sure the check engine light lights up on the dash. I'm also going to make sure the charge light and the oil pressure light come on. Now remember, the oil pressure light is the red one, the red battery light is the alternator, and the orange one is the check engine light. Now do bear in mind, because this is a Crown and it's a Japanese vehicle, you'll see that they never had an oil level sensor on there, okay? So that's completely standard, it's just how the car came. So in this particular case, your little orange oil level light, you're going to have to remove from the dash before you finish off, because that's just going to light up all the time and annoy you. The other one is going to be the TRC bulb. Remember, the IS200 used a very basic form of traction control called TRC. These much more advanced vehicles use VSC, or vehicle stability control. Much more complicated system, had things like yaw rate sensors and all that type of jazz. So you do need to remove the TRC bulb from the bottom of the dash there. Otherwise, again, it's just going to stay on and annoy the crap out of you on that one. All right, okay. So that's in relation to pretty much all the lights on the dash over there. Then what I'm going to do is we're going to come over here to our reverse switch from the gearbox. I'm going to use a wire to bridge it, which is effectively what the reverse switch does. We're going to hear the beep, the usual beep on an IS200 when the reverse gear is engaged. So that's going to tell me that from here all the way there inside the vehicle and all the way to the cluster, the reverse circuit is 100% working as we expect it to. Next up, we're going to move over to the speedo. So if you've watched a couple of our other videos, you'll know that we just use this device to output a signal. That's going to then make the dash go whoop on the speed thing, and we know then that from the plug all the way to inside the vehicle is 100% working, what we're looking for. Next up, OBD2, nice and simple. We're just going to plug in the OBD2 machine, show you that it's reading that it's a Crown 3UZ-FE. Now remember, we are using the OBD2 plug in the engine bay. Again, because of CAN, we cannot use the one inside the car. Obviously, we cannot run wires separately into there. And more importantly, I think pin 14 is already used up on this one for something else. So remember, 6 and 14 are the two CAN wires in the OBD2 protocol, or the standardized wiring of them. So again, we can't integrate with the one inside the car, so we had to fit one in the engine bay there. Okay, next up, we're going to test the fuel pump relay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link up in the top here. That's where I've done a video about the Toyota and Lexus fuel systems, exactly how they work and what you should expect from them. The only caveat with this one is that because we have that little orange box, what we've done, because lots of people asked for it, is we've actually added a fuel prime, which is again not standard on a Toyota vehicle. So when I put the key on, you're actually going to hear the fuel pump prime and the relay click, but bear in mind that is unique to our harnesses with that little box on there. That is not what would happen on a standard vehicle. But watch the video and you'll see the explanation there of exactly how the rest of it works, okay? And obviously we can turn on the fuel pump from the device, OBD2 machine, because the ECU is controlling the fuel pump 100%. All right. Next up, we're going to do AC clutch. Now, again, because of the 6-speed, the actual ECU doesn't control the AC. We are using our orange box to control it. We do feed the pressure switch in there, so it won't work if the pressure is too low or too high. So that's a little safety built in there. And obviously, when I press the command in there, you'll see that the AC request signal on the ECU does actually go active. We'll hear the relay click, so we're going to do it all in one go. And then actually when it's running, I'll just show you that basically when we press the AC, because we can send the ECU the signal for the AC request, it does actually idle up, and you'll hear that when I do it running. Okay. Then the next one is the brake switch. So remember, we fitted that little relay in there to imitate the 4-wire brake switch, which comes on pretty much all the 3UZs and 1UZ VVT-is and all of those type of jazz. So again, we're just going to then feed the brake switch wire with 12 volts, and then you're going to hear the relay click, and then we're going to see stoplight switch becoming active on the OBD2 machine. All right, so that's the sections that we're going to test with just the ignition on. When it comes to starting the vehicle, again, super simple. First one is starter circuits. What I mean by that is obviously we're going to put the key in the ignition, we're going to turn the key, we're going to turn it to start position, and the engine is going to start. Fantastic. Then I know that everything from inside of the car to there to the starter relay, everything is working 100%. So super happy with that. Then we're going to test the ACIS, or the acoustic control induction system, to give it its full name. Now, as you can see, this is resting in an open position. Okay, so all the little valves are open inside here. Now, I will put a link in the top there. I've done a whole video on this particular system. I actually pull a whole intake apart so you can see what it looks like inside, and obviously explain to you exactly what it does, how it works. In our case for testing, we just want to see this do that. All right, so that then tells me that the vacuum solenoid valve underneath is working and is wired correctly, and obviously it's going to close that valve, which will then close all the 8 butterflies inside here to keep the intake runner length in the long position, because obviously in the open position they are short. All right, so that's the ACIS. Drive-by-wire test, well, it's really, really simple and straightforward. We're just going to press the pedal. All right, these are full drive-by-wire. There's no cables involved, accelerated cables involved with this at all. So if I rev this and the engine revs up, we know it's working 100%. Next up, oil control valve for the VVT-i test. So what I'm going to do is jump on the machine. We then are going to make the bank 1 and bank 2, or bank 1 and bank 2 oil control valves work. The engine will go lumpy as I do that. That tells me that the oil control valves are working exactly as we expect them to. They're all wired correctly, and we're super happy with that. Next up is injectors and coils. Now, I usually pull all the injectors off, but luckily, because it's a 6-speed, I can actually test all of the injectors from the machine. Okay, so you'll see me do that, and I'll test each injector one by one, and you'll see it start to misfire. That then tells me that, hey, everything is working exactly as expected to. All the coils are firing, all the injectors are firing as they should do. Super happy with that. Next up, we're going to go to the tacho. So what I'm going to make sure is the rev count does come through. Remember our little orange box device, that is actually converting the 4-cylinder signal from the Crown to the 6-cylinder signal that the IS200/IS300 is looking for. Okay, so that takes care of all of that. So we should get an accurate one there versus what we see on the OBD2 machine. Fantastic. Coolant temp. Obviously that is transmitted via CAN to our orange box, and then from our orange box to MPX for the dash to read it. So again, before I move into the video starting the engine, I'll let it run up so you can actually see that that temperature gauge is working. All right. And then lastly, we're going to go through the diagnostics. Obviously, I've got the OBD2 machine in there, so that should work 100%. And then obviously we'll go through exactly how to do all of that. All right, so that's everything we're going to test. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into testing with just the ignition on. It's nice and straightforward, so we will jump into that now. So remember, the first one we're going to test is the ambient temperature. So I'm just going to grab my key for my half cut here. And you can probably hear the fuel pump running there and the relay clicking. And there it goes off. Okay, fantastic. Right, so first up, ambient temp, 23 degrees. Happy days. So we know that's reading correctly. Right, then we're going to move on to the check engine light. So we've got the check engine light there, and we've got the battery light, and we've got the oil light. Now the keen out amongst you will notice that the check engine light is quite dim. Don't worry, that's perfectly normal for a 6-speed. I think they're designed just for LED dashes, not actually for incandescent bulbs. This is currently running an incandescent bulb. What I will do is I am going to end up trying to get an LED bulb to replace that. So in the future, hopefully, that will be bright with a 6-speed ECU connected to it. Okay. So again, battery light, oil light, happy with that. So that's no problems there. Right, let's jump into our reverse switch here. So again, super simple. I'm just going to bridge it together, easier two-handed. So 1, 2, 3. Right, so you see just a straight bridge. And you get that lovely annoying IS200 beep. So I'm just going to pull that out now, and you can see that goes off. So that's working exactly as we expect it to. Moving on to the speedo. Again, nice and simple. If you've seen our other videos, you know exactly how this works. This is a 3-wire Hall effect style sensor, so it requires 12 volts, a ground, and a signal. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is put this into test mode, and you can see I'm using the power and the ground from here to verify that those are working as expected. So I'm testing all 3 wires to make sure they are correct. So just bear with me while I put it into test mode. There you go, nice and simple. So again, all I'm going to literally do is, let me just quickly go there. Right, so all I'm going to do now is I'm going to feed the yellow wire into there. And as I do that, what you're going to see is, there goes the speedo. And as I pull it out, I'm going to try and get it all in camera here. As I put it in, as I pull it out, it does that. So again, exactly what we want to see, absolutely perfect. So we'll just unplug all of that and put that out of the way for now. Right, so that's the speedo. What we're going to do is we're going to shear the other side, and let's start looking at that OBD2 machine. I'll bring that with me. Then we're like a goldfish. Right, okay, so we're going to click on OK. Obviously, I've previously put all this up, so it's actually going to jump straight into it, and you can actually see already the data that we've got over there. I'm going to go into function, I'm going to go into system select, and you're going to see there it's picking up as a Crown UZS190, okay? Right, so that is all good. So now we can go back into the engine, and what we're going to look for now is the fuel pump relay. Obviously you heard it already pumping, so I'm going to do it over here. I'm going to activate it, and then you're going to hear it again, just so 100% sure. Right, so we're going to go into control the fuel pump. We're going to go into enter. I'm going to press that little sideways arrow, and you can hear it kick in. So let's do that now. Right. Hopefully you heard that. There's the fuel pump relay. Now, if you watch my video, you'll know that that's not actually called the fuel pump relay, it's called the circuit opening relay. But my video that I put up earlier explains all of that in great detail. So if you guys want to know that, watch that video and you'll know exactly what's going on there. Right, so we've got fuel pump on there. Right, let's do our AC clutch request. Now, again, the AC compressor, AC magnetic clutch relay is in this fuse box over here, okay? So this is where we're going to listen for the click for. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the data list on here so we can actually see that. And if you give me a second while I scroll down, because these are not the fastest machines on the planet. Okay. Let me find AC request. There's a lot of data in here. We've got, come on, AC signal, I think it's over here. There's our AC signal over there, so hopefully you can see that. I'm going to try and move this around. So AC signal is currently off. I'm going to pop over here, and now you can see that our AC signal is now on. So that's fantastic. I'm going to switch it off. And as you can hear down here, on, off. Fantastic. That tells me everything is working. So as long as your aircon system is hooked up, as long as you've got that pump that you need to get, obviously you can't use the Crown one because of the way that it works. And as long as all your pipes are okay and your pressure switch in the front is connected and working properly, your AC system will work 100%. Okay, so that's all that. Now then we're going to move on to brake switch. So again, nice and simple. All I'm going to basically do is I'm going to feed the brake switch with 12 volts. So again, this is our relay that's imitating the 4-wire switch. And I'm just going to quickly pop that in there. And as I pop that in there, you can hear the relay clicking. I'm just going to leave that to one side for a second, because nicely you can see that I have the stoplight switch just above AC signal, and you can see now that that is on. I'm going to pull that wire out. Let's see, stoplight switch. And there it goes off as I pull the wire out. So that's working exactly as we expected to. Super happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is, obviously you keen out amongst you would have seen there that the engine is only about 38 degrees. So obviously we won't pull anything on the dash in terms of having a temperature signal until it's above 40 degrees. Fun little fact for you guys. It doesn't start reading until it's 40 degrees, as you can see clearly on there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start it, let it idle for a little bit, get it to warm up so you can actually see the temperature on the dash, and we'll be back, and then we'll do all the running tests. So bear with me, and we're back. Right, so we're back now, and I have let the engine warm up for a little bit, so you can see our coolant temp is obviously up there off the needle. Again, when I run it, it's going to heat up a bit, so once we go through all the testing, hopefully you're going to see that rise up, and obviously then we'll come back and make sure that it is going up as it's supposed to. Right, quick recap. Starter circuit, that's just making sure that when I turn the key, the engine fires over and starts. That means the whole starter circuit is all okay, and we're happy with that. ACIS, we are just going to check and make sure that this valve goes from the upright to the sideways position over there. Then a drive-by-wire test, simple rev of the pedal. You can actually hear the pedals already working there. Then we're going to do the oil control valve test, so that's via this. Again, we're going to activate the two solenoids, bank one and bank 2. You're going to hear the engine run a bit lumpy. That tells me that both of those valves are working as we expect it to. Then we're going to go in there and we're going to test each injector one by one, so from 1 down to 8, and then you're going to hear it misfire as I test each one to make sure that all 8 cylinders are firing as we expect it to. Then we're going to look at the tacho. So again, this tacho is being controlled via the MPX box, and what I mean by that is it's converting the 4-cylinder signal from the Crown to the 6-cylinder signal that the IS200 wants. So we're going to get an accurate reading through here when we fire it up. Then coolant temp will just come back at the very end to make sure that it has actually risen up while we've been doing that. And then we're going to go through diagnostics. What you guys need to do, we'll show you that there's no codes. We've remapped the ECU, so the automatic gearbox is completely gone from the ECU, so it's officially a manual ECU. And obviously we've removed the secondary Lambda codes, so they're not going to pop up. We've removed any sort of evaporation codes, they're not going to pop up. And obviously it's mainly on US ECUs that has evaporation codes, but anyway. Right, so what I'm going to do is put my headsets on so I don't deafen myself, and then we'll jump straight in and start doing it. So bear with me a second. Right, so let's do this. So again, we're going to turn the key and fire up. So there you go. Fires up nice and sweet. ACIS. You can see that valve has gone down. We're happy with that. Very rev happy. She goes off there. Next up, oil control valve. So let's jump into that. We've got active test. VVT-i system bank 1. Active test. VVT-i system bank 2. Right, that's that. Right, so next up we've got injectors and coils. So we're going to do cylinder 1. There you go. Cylinder 2. There you go. Cylinder 3. cylinder 8. Fantastic, so that's all of those. Right, so tacho, you see that's just above 1,000. I'm going to bring all the data back again now. And our engine speed is about 1,000. And there we're about 1,000. So that's spot on over there. And obviously the coolant temp has clearly gone up from when we originally did it. Rightio. Okay. So obviously, I don't know if you saw, obviously the engine light and everything went off when it was running. I didn't actively show that to you guys. Oh, actually, let me show you the aircon quickly. So I just want to show you that the aircon idles up as soon as you press the button. So we'll quickly start it again. Okay, fantastic. And obviously check engine light as well. Rightio. Okay, we'll put the ignition back on just so we can get into the machine and do all the checking. Right, so in terms of this particular vehicle, this is not like the older style ones where you can do the check engine light by the flash codes. Unfortunately, this is a much newer system, so OBD2 is really the only way to get codes out of the system and make sure everything is fine. Now, do remember, you can still bridge TC and earth. We have put it in the OBD2 plug so you can use it, so you can still bridge it to put it into diagnostic mode, so you can do things like, you know, check the timing with a light on the engine. So that still works, just the check engine light will not flash like the old ones do. Okay, so obviously if you've got problems and the check engine light is on, you're going to need to get your hands on some type of OBD2 machine that can read codes, because often you can be literally stabbing in the dark. You guys need to let the ECU tell you what the problem is, and then you can rectify it from there. I'm not saying it's a solve all issues thing, but at least as a bare minimum, you've got a code, you've got something to look at in order to help you diagnose a problem. Obviously, we do help our clients as well if they have issues when they start it up, but obviously we do all the testing here so you guys can see that, you know, when it's here, as long as everything is perfect, in terms of the actual installation, you should be running 100%. Okay, so just to quickly check on here and make sure that the remap has done its job, we're obviously going to go into detect trouble or diagnostic trouble codes. And you can see there we've got a flat out 0 codes, we've got nothing in pending, we've got nothing in historical, and obviously I've started this thing up numerous times. So again, nice and simple, no secondary lambdas, they're gone out of the software, nothing else that is going to cause you issue. As long as everything that I've shown you in this harness is plugged in, you're good to go. You should have no check engine light, no issues. If your map stops working, check engine light, diagnostic machine, fix the problem. All right. Okay, so really super simple. Plug in a diagnostic machine, get your codes, fix your issue. But most importantly, you shouldn't have any issues provided everything is absolutely perfect. All right, so if you guys have any questions, please feel free to comment down below, or you can message us on our Facebook page at Phoenix Engine Management. Okay, obviously we want to get this off to you, Carlos, so you can then get this in your vehicle and get it all installed. Obviously you can see everything is now done here, ECU's remapped. We've got your pedal, which we will supply with you, so you can have everything fitted in the vehicle. So all you need to do is put it on the engine, plug in your MAF sensor, do your alternator cable and your starter cable, and you should be ready to rock and roll. So again, thank you guys for watching. We will be back soon. Got a couple of link harnesses that I've got to test now as well. So you will see us in the not too distant future with those. But again, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, put your hand to the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean and I bring it to the mad light, ain't got time to kill, I got time to feel, I took the red pill, I know life's short so I wanna live real, but how's it supposed to feel?